Hi, everyone. This is Tim Barron from Rocket Matter. Thanks so much for joining us today for the latest presentation in our Law Practice Management and Productivity webinar series. Today, we're very excited to have Natalie Alessi and Samantha Collier back with us to discuss lawyers and social media marketing and ethical issues that they will encounter. Natalie runs a global consulting practice with law firms and Fortune 500 companies specializing in social media, cloud technologies, project management, and communications. She is the principal at Legalers Welcome, and Samantha assists lawyers, law firms, and legal industry consultants in their social media marketing efforts. She's the author of Social Media for Law Firms, winner of the 2011 Canadian Law Blog Awards in Best Practice Management category, and Sam is also recognized as one of Canada's top legal social media influencers. She's also the director of social media and content development at Shift Digital Media. Thanks for joining us, Natalie and Samantha. I'll turn it over to you guys.
Well, thanks so much, Tim. Sam and I are very excited today, and want to thank everyone for joining. We have some good information to share with you. So, without further ado, we're going to go ahead and get started here. A couple of things on our agenda today. We want to give you just a basic overview again on where law firms are at with social media. Couple of social media platforms that you should be focusing on if you're not already. Talk about social media scheduling and the tools available for that. And the big questions here, social media ethics for lawyers. So let's go ahead and dive in. So Sam, I'm going to have you start us off a little bit with the overview on social media for lawyers.
Perfect. So I know that everyone listening, there's going to be a variety of levels that people are using social media. So I'm just going to assume that everyone has a LinkedIn profile, that people will probably have a personal Facebook profile that they might be using for business development And what I'm going to tell you right now is no matter what level you're at, the people that are looking for you and that are looking to hire you are expecting to find you online via your website and social networks. And it's very important to make sure that your website is mobile friendly. More and more people are looking for you on their smartphones, like their iPhone, their Galaxy. I have an iPhone, so I have to be pro Apple here. But if your website isn't able to be viewed on an iPhone, that's pretty awful, because I look at websites all day long, and if I can't see it, I just flip through to the next one. So it's very important to take a look and see, on your smartphone right now what it looks like. And what you would want your website to be is in responsive design. So that's becoming more and more important. Another thing to think about is the first time someone brings up a name to me, and if I don't know them, I Google them. And when someone refers your name, to possibly hire you for work, that person is going to look for you online, and your social networks are going to be the first things that come up. And you're going to be wondering, what do they find you? Do they find a really good LinkedIn profile? Are they finding a Twitter stream with practical information? Are they finding, a Facebook page with lots of albums of your lawyers? And that sort of thing makes you more approachable. And so it's a really good idea to do those sorts of things online. The second thing that lawyers are doing is they're using social media to build their reputation. And online, that's also known as social influence, which is a tagline you hear, quite often. And before social media, how did lawyers go about doing this? And most times they wrote articles in journals. They spoke at conferences, and of course, they won cases, and that would build buzz. Lots of these activities cost money and time, which social media also takes, but social media allows you to sort of grow your expectation, share your insight via Twitter, Facebook, LinkedIn, and or blogging. You can publish those white papers online via publishing sites like JD Supra. You can host webinars like these if you're very brave. And you can also start a blog, and there's there's really no reason not to start doing these things. They do take time, but they will build your social authority online. And Tim and I were just talking about this, is once you start doing that, you can start, looking at your clout score, which is spelled KLOUT. And I wouldn't look at it like the be-all and end-all of your activities online, because it's kind of controversial. But you can kind of see what you're becoming influential in, and it's a good way to gauge your activities.
Yeah, and can I add also too, one of the things too with building your reputation online, the nice thing is that, obviously with the internet, it levels the playing field for the legal industry, and you're no longer limited. In the past, lawyers, they may have only been able to, present at a conference within a particular demographic area. Well, now, that demographic is just become the whole world. Just because you're physically located and may live in one area, the nice thing about these social channels and building your social influence, as Sam is explaining, is that, the world is your audience. And, it's something to think about when you are building that social media and online influences. Where are your clients? Where is your target audience? Where do you want to focus your time? And using the technology such as Clout, you can see where you're influential, and it can give you insight on where you may want to grow, build, and spend your time.
Well, and what you said is key, because even if you're not part of one of these, big AM law firms that has a gigantic budget of millions and millions of dollars, social media is not free by any means. It does take time, and you do need to realize that. But if you start a blog and you really put your effort into creating, meaningful content, you can do way better than some of those firms, because I look at all those blogs all the time. And some blogs, they don't get updated very often. Now, if you do that, you can definitely be ahead. So I'm glad that you brought that up. So the next thing that I'm going to talk about is how social media is different than traditional legal marketing. And I have a nice little analogy that I borrowed from John Wilshire to describe it. So traditional marketing is more like fireworks. There's big single messages that are similar to your email newsletters, your publications, your press releases, and you create those to get seen by tons of people. They're really explosive, and they last for a very short time. You see them, you think they're amazing, and then they're gone. So social media is a little bit different. It's more like building bonfires. You're creating smaller, cozier spaces that draw in a few people, maybe more than a few people, not as many people as fireworks for sure, but they come and go, and the light is kept up indefinitely, and the engagement and conversation is flowing, and it's a two-way conversation. Now, you can launch fireworks to attract attention to your bonfire, but it's definitely different. So you can't look at them as the same exact thing. They're very similar in the way that, some of the messaging and the branding and those sorts of things that you need to sort of keep consistent across the board, but that is how they're different.
Oh, that's a good one, Sam. I just tweeted that. Social media is like bonfires. That's perfect. So that's a tweet there for all of you. Okay, so moving on from social media as a bonfire, and I really love that analogy. That's a great analogy for.
I'm glad you liked
it.
Well, I didn't come up with it. That's why I sourced them. Otherwise, I couldn't.
I know. Well,
but
I think he's fabulous for that analogy. I love analogies. It's a big part of explaining how things work, right? So if we were going to talk about, a lot of times clients will say to me, well, what are those law firms doing? What is that law firm doing? And I say, well, they're using social media. They may not be using it well, but they're using it. So, this here where we're talking about your competition is using social media, that's very important. Law firms want to know what the other ones are doing.
Yeah. And that's the thing, is the great part about social media is it's public. It's out there. You can't, if a law firm is protecting their tweets, that I won't get into profanities here, but that is just completely ridiculous on some levels.
They don't get it.
And if you make a list, what I usually say to do is, get a piece of paper, write down your top 5 competitors, or start a spreadsheet. I love spreadsheets, and then use Google Docs or whatever you want. Write them down. Go to their Facebook page, go to their Twitter account, go to their LinkedIn page, go to their website, and jot down what they're doing. Jot down when their last post was. Jot down what types of posts they're posting, because sometimes people wonder, like, what should I post about? Really, am I posting about what I'm eating for breakfast? Am I posting pictures of myself? Like, get an idea for what they're doing. And you can also jack their ideas and change them a little bit if you like them, which is really good too. And you can also see who's following them, what type of people are following them, how they're using their branding, how they're using their imaging, and write it all down. See which ones are doing better than others, and keep tabs on looking at them. Go, every month you can see what conferences they're looking at if they decide to post that. You can look at their Facebook page and you can see which pages they like as their Facebook page, and sometimes that can give you insight as to who their clients are, because sometimes they'll like their clients' pages. And you'll also get an idea of just what their overall social strategy is. And from there, you can sort of craft your own strategy. If theirs is working, you can take little parts of theirs, add yours. And that's something I do on a regular basis.
Yeah, yeah, I do that too. And I think it's important, to point out that it is part of the overall strategy for law firms. And, you're going to have a firm strategy. But what I find too, Sam, and I'm sure you find this as well, that, not only are the firms as a whole having strategies, or lack thereof, may I say, but sometimes, even if they don't do it on a firm as a whole, certain practice groups within firms may be more accepting of going down the social route, and they will start their focus within a particular practice group. So, if you work for a firm or you're a smaller practice, you don't have to do it as a firm as a whole, but you can do it on a practice group level and start to be the influencer and influential within your practice group, even if your firm as a whole has not taken, the plunge into building a strategy.
Exactly. It's sort of you control that part of social media. We don't control the messaging, or the how you can't control how people talk to you, but you can put in your time, and what you invest, you will get back.
Absolutely.
And I saw you got to the next slide here, which is my little Eggman.
I know, I
And
love this.
it's talking about how conversations must be authentic when using social media. Now, this can be a tough nut to crack when you're just starting out in your law firm, or when I just start working with professionals, is many times they just want to tweet and post, their newsletter articles, or, parts of their website, or bios, their lawyer bios. And although those things do have their place in social media, and I do think that you do need to post things like that, what's key here is conversation too. Your clients and potential clients don't want you to market to them. I'm sure if you go onto Facebook and you go onto Twitter, we're being hounded by promoted tweets and promoted posts, and I think Facebook is going crazy with us now by doing, suggested posts and your friends like this and that type of thing. You need to start engaging with people. Now, that can be tricky as a law firm. We're not Starbucks here, so we can't just say, do you like my coffee? Click yes, or click like. You can do things more like, if you work for, if you're a family lawyer, you can say, click like or share if you agree that, going through a divorce is a tough thing to do. Or it's something where you're actually getting into their emotion. You're getting into their shoes, and you're seeing, what they feel like. And I have another analogy here, Natalie, and you're going to love this one, is social media is a little like being a stand-up comedian. It's imperative that you know your audience and to know your engagement. And how do these comics know that their jokes are funny? They watch their audience, and if people are yawning, okay, it's not very funny, right? If you're not getting likes or shares or retweets, you shouldn't keep doing what you're doing. If people are laughing and if people are retweeting what you're saying, then you keep building on that and you do similar things to that. You need to drop the elevator pitch and you need to actually talk to people. And you also need to be interested in hearing what they have to say as well.
Yeah, I think, and it's funny because Tim and I and you were talking about this before the start of this webinar. When you do presentations with an audience, you may have one mindset about what you want to communicate, what you want to contribute, but depending on the knowledge level of the people in your audience, you have to be a really good I like to say super sleuth and good at reading people and their body language to see, if they're interested in what you're saying. And, when we take the traditional way of presenting and we put it online and we put it on a social scale, sometimes it's hard to gauge about what you're sharing and if people are finding it relevant and helpful. So everything you're saying then, Sam, about your conversations being authentic and being retweeted and having those and even someone having a conversation with you are all good indicators that you're doing the right thing. Okay, this one I love. Lawyers are using social media to supercharge their event attendance. So many attorneys that I work with and talk to have been supercharging their events, Sam, with hashtags, as I'm sure you're seeing with your clients as well. They're hashtagging their events so that, like we have today, the RM webinar hashtag, and they're engaging people not only in the room with their presentations but online as well. And I just came across this the other day. Although I guess I've known that you could do this for a while, but of course it becomes technical. And for those of you that read, use PowerPoint, you can embed real-time tweet streams in your presentations.
I didn't know that. That's
awesome.
Yes,
yeah. So I think I put a link to it somewhere in this presentation that Tim will share afterwards. But so that's something that I think for those of you that are a little bit more dynamic and progressive. Oh, no. I think law firms in general, yes. I mean, you're always tweeting hashtags, Sam, and starting the conversations. But I think, when with law firms and attorneys, when they're presenting, it's something that I think that they forget about. And it's another way to reach their target audience. And it does not limit them to a physical demographic, location. Again, the world can be their audience. So what other things have you found?
Well, in my experience working in a law firm and, helping lawyers with social media is I find that depending on your practice, a lot of lawyers attend, big annual events, and it could be global, it could just be, nearby. But what these event organizers are doing is they usually have websites. On their website, they have links to their social media profiles. Then from there, you can go to their Twitter accounts and you can see if they do have hashtags, and some of the bigger conferences do have hashtags. I know in IP there's the INTA conference and they have an INTA hashtag. They actually even have a tweet up, which I hosted a couple of years ago, which is super fun. And a lot of the times when you're going to these events, you're going not just for the super exciting CLE sessions and all the fun stuff that you're doing, you're going to actually do some business development with potential clients. Now, if you're interested to see who's attending these events, you can actually look on the Twitter feed or look on the website, and lots of times they'll have an actual attendee list, and you can research these people online, and you can research their social media profiles, you can research, their website profiles, and you can kind of do a little bit of like recon prior to when you're going. And prior to social media, you weren't able to do this. I used to print out LinkedIn profiles of everyone that my lawyers were meeting with so that they could kind of see who they were. And if they didn't have a LinkedIn profile, it was awful. Now, about 3 or 4 years ago, it was true. You didn't find people a lot. But now it's very, very rare that someone doesn't have an actual LinkedIn profile. I mean, many times their LinkedIn profile isn't the best, I can say, but most people do have them now. And so it's it's all about research. It's all about looking up who you might want to meet with, and it's really just about gathering information and doing research.
Right, right. No, I'm just laughing because it is funny, so many attorneys, they do have LinkedIn profiles. And it's interesting to see how our research has really changed over the last 10 years when we talk about these
and
events.
even 5 years, like
I know.
it's changed, and just the perception of social media. And I'm glad that we've moved more from convincing people to just training people on what the best practices are versus, trying to get people to realize that you do need to do it.
Yeah.
People know now they do need to do it. It's just about how do you do it right.
Right. Yeah. Right. And I think that's the biggest thing. People know they need to do it, and they just are not sure how to get there. So,
And they don't want to look silly.
well,
That's one of the things.
absolutely. Absolutely. They don't want to look like they don't know what they're doing. But I do have to say that at one time, and I'm sure you can attest to this too, Sam, we didn't know what we were doing either.
Oh,
But,
you have to take a step.
you have to take that first step, right? So,
Yes.
what are law firms doing in 2013? They're really doing quite a bit. They're not all there yet, and some of the more progressive law firms are doing things like video bios, and they have YouTube
Which are
channels.
awesome.
Yeah, and I came across a firm that did video bios, and they were asking questions of their attorneys like, what made you want to become an attorney? Or, just some things that were a little bit more personal. So it like humanized the person. It made the attorneys seem more approachable.
And
It
that's
wasn't
key. That's the
exactly.
thing, is that lawyers sometimes can appear to be a step away. People may not think that you're approachable. And these sorts of things, and especially videos, and I think video bios are amazing, and I really hope that becomes a little bit more current across all law firms, is that people get to know you. And, they'll pick up the phone and call you, perhaps when they hear your voice, or they hear that, you're sort of similar to them and you have similar problems and issues.
Well, that and it makes them, human and more approachable, like you said, so that they can start up a conversation. So video bios, I'd like to see even more of them, and law firms utilizing them moving forward on from 2013. Of course, what are they doing? They're engaging on LinkedIn and Twitter, which really I'd say, Sam, in my experience, and I don't know if you'll agree with me here, but they seem to be the top two channels, with the exception, of course, of blogging, but they seem to be the top two channels right now that they're focusing on is the LinkedIn and the Twitter. But I'm also finding that there are a lot of attorneys and law firms that are starting now to engage more on Google+. So that's something that I'm seeing a little bit more of. And then, of course, obviously, publishing content via blogs, is very, very common. Levels the playing field again with the internet. Because the content that people are pushing out, if it's good, if it's relevant to the audience that they're targeting, people are going to talk about it. People are going to read it, and this is another area that that helps build law firms' reputation as a whole and reputation for your practices. A couple of other things that I'm seeing law firms do here is, of course, including the social channels in their email signatures and also on their bio pages on their website. So definitely seeing that in their communications. Something else that firms want to be thinking about is putting that information in their social channels on some of their collateral. For example, business cards. I'm not sure how relevant it would be on firm letterhead, but just think about including some of that information on the firm's collateral. And an idea that I've had for a while, and I don't know of any firms doing this, so if you are out there and you are doing this, I would love to have a conversation with you. But how can law firms make their RFPs to their clients more engaging? Is there anything on the social channels, even if they made it private or, wanted to share a particular piece of information? How could law firms really make their sort of boring RFP paper-based, but even if it's electronic, how can they make that more engaging to really get that wow factor for clients? So I'd be curious to see if any law firms are doing that with their RFPs.
Hey guys, I'm going to jump in for a bit here. We have a couple of questions. Um, the first is, and I'm just going to toss up two questions to you right away. First is, what's a hashtag? And I think Samantha, you had mentioned something about a tweet up, and I love this question from Jamie. What is a tweet up? I hear about this and picture people sitting around tweeting instead of talking.
Just sitting in the room tweeting each other, right, on their smartphones without actually looking at each other. I love that.
Well, I have to tell you, I've done that. I've done that. That's probably sad to admit.
This morning. Okay, I'll tell you what a tweet up is, just because I hosted it, and I know that Natalie can explain hashtags a whole lot better than I can. So a tweet up is when I'll take the INTA example, the conference. So INTA is an annual, very large conference that IP lawyers attend that focus on trademarks and things every year, and it's in a different city every year across the United States most times. Or no, actually it's worldwide. And so IP lawyers will tweet with each other all year, not about INTA but about other things, and they'll talk about IP stuff, and they'll get to know other IP lawyers, and all these lawyers across the world will usually attend this conference. So all the lawyers that talk about IP and trademarks on Twitter will actually get to meet in person. And so usually it's not organized by the event unless the event is like super socially great and awesome. And it'll be sort of someone on Twitter will organize an informal event, at a restaurant. I did it with Nils Montan and Rob Holmes before at I think we did it at a little restaurant next to a conference hotel in San Francisco, and there was probably about, and maybe some people that were listening here as well, there was about 30 to 50 people, and I've been tweeting with these people the whole year, and then we finally get to meet, and it's really funny because usually people are really shy, and so you actually get everyone talking, and that's called a tweet up. And then we actually had a streaming video projected onto the wall of people using the hashtag and tweeting at the same time. So yeah, there were a couple people that were tweeting, but most people were talking.
That's good. The tweet ups, a lot of times too, Sam, like you're talking about them being at a conference. A lot of the legal conferences that take place in the United States, at least, usually will have a designated time and place for everyone that has conversations on Twitter to meet. So it's becoming more common that we're seeing with these tweet ups.
Yes.
And so to kind of dovetail off of the tweet up where you mentioned hashtags, hashtags are basically a search term. So whenever you see a 140 character little blurb that someone has tweeted, you will see something with the pound sign or the hash symbol and then some text after that hashtag, or after the hashtag. For example, today we're using the hashtag RM webinar for Rocket Matter webinar. So anyone who maybe not be able to be on the webinar can maybe follow some tips and tricks that people are tweeting from this webinar. The other good thing with hashtags is they're very searchable. And they're searchable. They really originated with Twitter, but you now find them on LinkedIn and Facebook, and they use them on Google+. So they're really across all the social channels. But hashtags are a way for people to find a particular topic or a particular conversation. So anything that you're tweeting, you want to pick a hashtag that's relevant to the topic that you're tweeting about and hashtag it at the end of your tweet or at the end of your post. You want to try not to go overboard with your hashtags.
Yeah.
If you have a tweet that has, 10 hashtags in it, sometimes you don't have enough room for the information to share the good information. But for law firms that are having events, definitely attaching a hashtag to the event or the presentation or the pro bono presentation that they're doing, create a hashtag and do a little bit of research, as Sam was talking about earlier, doing your research, researching what hashtags people in your practice and in your industry are using.
And when people may be asking questions, this is another thing, is you kind of have to get into the mindset of the clients you're looking for, and when they're having problems in their life related to why they might hire you, what would they be talking about on Twitter? So what would they be saying? I have a question about this, I have a question about that. Research those keywords within Twitter. And now the big thing is Facebook with hashtags. So you can also, I've been playing around with that as well.
Absolutely. So, at the end of the day, it makes your content findable, right? If people find your content, it's another way for them to connect with you. So, Tim, if that's okay, I'm going to move on here because we do have a lot of content for you today, and we're not quite halfway through our presentation, so we're going to try to speed it up here a little bit. So, we're going to talk about some of the different channels that lawyers are using. And lawyers are using LinkedIn. So, Sam, I'm going to let you take the next couple of slides away.
Yeah, so I won't go and read everything through here, but I think most of you are already using LinkedIn, and according to Kevin O'Keefe, who is a very big mentor of mine, and you should definitely follow him and research him if you're interested in this topic, is that your clients are using LinkedIn. 9 out of 10 professionals use it often. People are going to look you up on LinkedIn. They want to see you. I know some people that won't hire you if you're not on LinkedIn because it makes it hard to do their research. And LinkedIn is known as the business social network. You will get these slides afterwards, so I won't go through all of these, but this is a real easy checklist of things that you must do to optimize your LinkedIn profile. If you don't do these things, they're real newbie mistakes. And if you have any questions about how to do these things, you can tweet me online, and I'll be happy to show you how to do this. So I won't go through everything on there.
Right. One thing I do want to add is sometimes people are concerned that when they are optimizing their profile that they don't want their connections to get all the updates of what they're optimizing. So I do want to just point out that there is a setting. If you go into your LinkedIn settings, you can actually turn off the updates at that time while you're updating your LinkedIn profile, which, again, you may want people to see that you're updating your LinkedIn profile. So it's a, kind of debatable on your
That's good because sometimes I'll change something and then people will write me an email and be like, congratulations on your move to this company. And I'm like, what? I didn't even know that it was even out there. So that's a really good reminder. And I can see here we're talking about Twitter, and I think Natalie and I have already done a really good job on convincing you, but you can also use Twitter to keep up to date on news and current events. I did this when there was an earthquake in Vancouver about a year and a half ago, and I think I might have been on the phone with you, Natalie, when that happened.
Oh, you know what, Sam? Yes. I remember that.
Yes. There was an earthquake, and I thought maybe I'm just having a moment here, or I heard all the windows creaking on the building I was in, and the first place I looked was Twitter, because I knew if I looked up the hashtag Vancouver and the hashtag earthquake, within seconds people were tweeting, hey, did you feel that? Did you feel that? And it was a 6.7 earthquake. And that's what I mean. It's the first place to go to find out current events, and you can also do that relating to your practice areas. You can follow people that are sort of in that business. The next one here is, I know lawyers are a little bit iffy about using Facebook, but I'm still a very strong advocate of it. I've actually had clients land some pretty big pieces of litigation through Facebook, but again, it is all about how you use it. Social media is about word of mouth, referrals, and recommendations. You are most likely connected with family, friends, school chums, colleagues, etc. I don't think you should clutter your news feed with, all practice-related information, but if you just drop in an article or something interesting, once a week, couple times a week, should the need arise for your services, people will remember you because they trust you, or they pretend to trust you, but they trust you, and they will think of you, and that's been a very good strategy for lots of people that I do know. And as Natalie said, more and more lawyers are using Google+. It has become the second largest social network. Communities are key. I've been doing this with a couple of my clients, is creating communities relating to their practice areas, and then they sort of build up their expert reputation. And you definitely, if you have a blog, you need to be doing, the Google authorship, which I won't get into, but you can Google on how to add that. And that's just another way to enhance your SEO and enhance your trust online as well.
Right, right. And there's actually a whole Google Plus community on author rank and Google authorship. It's quite interesting, and even if your law firm is not on Google Plus or your lawyers aren't on Google Plus, just the fact that you can link your attorney's picture to any content that they share on the web, just for the search engine ranking and SEO alone, it's worth taking a look into there. So good.
Well, and anything that has to do with Google, I mean, honestly, with SEO, I think it's always great to be they're the controller of SEO. I mean, at the very least, you should have a good Google Plus profile and keep it updated, at least once a day, once a week, that kind of thing.
Definitely, definitely. And we want to give some tips for everybody listening today on some social media management tools because, I'm kind of guilty of this. I've become, helping so many other people that I have a hard time managing the 101 social profiles that I end up having. And sometimes I do a good job of my own stuff. I probably do a better job with other people's stuff than I do with my own anymore. But it easily allows you to filter conversations based on your interests or your audience interests. So it's very easy to filter out and weed out the noise. And you have the ability to schedule your posts during the week when you have time. A lot of times I'll do stuff on a Sunday night for the week so that my stuff gets pushed out just because I want to share some good content. And then of course you can access your social media management tools most of the time from your mobile devices. So if you have 5 minutes and you're bored in a meeting, you can see what people are saying on a particular hashtag, a particular topic, or for a particular audience. So basically having an easy, quick way to share and have your conversations. So if you're not using a social media management tool, you may want to think about that. And Sam, I don't know what you use, but I've always been a big fan of Hootsuite. And I've used that religiously over the years. It's become my favorite tool. Another one here that I'm starting to investigate further is this Crowd Booster. And the reason that I am really interested in this one and to research this one a little bit more is that it says it offers social media analytics with suggestions and tools to help you improve your online presence. So I'm interested in researching this one a little bit more because I think for attorneys who are new to social media and where to spend their time and where to, what hashtags to use, I'd be curious to see a little bit more about how this one works. Is there any other ones that you like?
Well, personally, I use Sprout Social. It does have a cost associated with it, but I enjoy everything that it does use. It integrates Feedly, because the RSS, Google RSS reader is going out the window, which I can't stand. But they integrate, and now they're moving over to Feedly as well. So if you're looking for posts to share, everything is within it. You don't have to move out to different networks. They've just added Google Plus integration as well. And the price varies from about $59 upwards to $100 or so, depending on how many users you have. I would just start off with Hootsuite if I was a lawyer, just without wanting to pay anything. And then if you want something a little bit more, powerful, Sprout Social, I love it. It also produces really neat reports as well. Like you can kind of see it on the window there. There's some graphs and stuff. So you can see what tweets are being tweeted and who's retweeting you the most, and it just kind of puts it in an easier to read format. And also if you're wanting to present, within your firm, the fruits of your efforts, this is a really good way to sort of present it as well.
Yeah, and I think too, the Sprout Social, and I've used that periodically as well, it's good for law firms as a whole, or if you want to manage your social media just for within your practice,
Yes.
because there is a cost associated. So that's something to consider as well.
Exactly.
So, oh, social media ethics, Sam.
Oh, no.
We're going to move. I know this is I think why I hope some people, to get all their good tips. The big question, and this has been a question around for a while, is what happens now with social media and lawyers and ethics. And I do want to preface this by saying that I am a mere layperson. I am not a lawyer, and I am not an ethics guru. But what I will say is that I've done a lot of research on it. From those who are lawyers and who are in the trenches and have had some experience with clients and their questions on working with social media and ethics. So, the big one is the ABA's model rules of professional conduct, and obviously you can Google that and get the link to that on the web. And the main rule here that we talk about in the marketing world really is the Rule 7.1, which basically says lawyers are not to make false or misleading communication about the lawyer or the lawyer's services. And then, of course, if you go in a little bit further and you look at the ethics, they talk about Rule 7.2, which is basically the advertising, okay? And I won't read every single thing that the rule states, but basically it says a lawyer may advertise services through written, recorded, or electronic communication, including public media. Now, the rules are still quite general, and they do provide a little bit of guidance, but we've not really seen anything really specific from the ABA on guidance there on what they're not really allowed to do, I guess, specifically mentioning social media. So what I've done and what Sam and I have done for you is just to put together a couple of key things for you to be thinking about as you embark on using social media as an individual attorney and things within your law firm. So here's a case, Bland versus Roberts, where a Facebook like was considered not constitutionally protected speech. One of the great blogs that I follow is the MoFo blog. They put together a socially aware newsletter every quarter, and this was mentioned in there. And basically, the details of this case, a federal district court in Virginia ruled that a Facebook like is insufficient speech to merit constitutional protection. And according to the court, liking involves no actual statement, and constitutionally protected speech could not be inferred from one click of a button. So this was an interesting case and just something to think about when you are liking pages or different websites around the internet. So something to think about there. Here, as we move on a little bit, 6 states passed legislation regarding employers' access to employee and applicant social media accounts. California, Delaware, Illinois, Maryland, Michigan, and New Jersey enacted legislation that prohibits an employer from requesting or requiring an employee or applicant to disclose a username or password for his or her personal social media account. We may see more of this legislation become more prevalent in 2013. Texas has proposed a similar bill, and California proposed a bill that would expand its current protections for private employees to also include public employees. So something for law firms to think about with regard to social media as a whole. And it was quite good timing for Mr. Kevin O'Keefe, who I think I would say is a mentor, I would say, for a lot of us in legal marketing and social media. Kevin really puts out some great content, and he did a blog post the other day that was called Lawyers Online Marketing Not Drawing Ethics Complaints. And I think that the timing of Kevin's post in our presentation, Sam, was just perfect. But he had a comment and on his post, and you can, of course, go on his blog to see it. But his comment was, despite lawyers' fears, states are receiving few, if any, bar complaints arising out of lawyers' use of the Internet for marketing and business development. Grievances related to lawyers' marketing efforts are arising out of non-internet-based activities. And when I read that, I thought that's pretty powerful. That's pretty powerful. Yeah. And I think that for those attorneys that are very skeptical about social media and they're worried about ethics, I think as long as you use common sense, which is a whole nother conversation we could have about that on the internet as well, right, Sam? Using common sense. But I think that that is key in Kevin's findings there. And I think that lawyers need to really think about that, that we're not seeing any bar complaints arising out of lawyers' use of the internet for marketing and business development. So, there could be a couple of schools of thought on that, maybe because the legal community isn't quite there yet, or people aren't as educated, but we're not seeing it yet. We're not seeing it. And Sam, this is a case that I think you had started following a while ago, and you had pointed this out, and I don't know if it was one of the last presentations that we did, but the case of Phone Dog versus Noah Kravitz, where you had the interview with Noah. And for those of you that are not familiar, Noah built up a big following for the company on Twitter, and when he left the company, he took his following with him. So here, the employer-employee litigation over ownership of social media accounts. And we saw a settlement in this case between the two. So anything that you want to add on this one, Sam, or a little bit about your interview with Noah?
No, I think that, because we have a long presentation here, I don't want to go into too much detail, and you can Google it to find out more information about the case. But, it was really interesting to see. It raises questions if you are using a Twitter account while you're at work, or if you created it while you're at work, who owns that Twitter account and what is put in place prior to that account, so those sorts of issues don't come up as to who owns it. And I believe the company had said that each Twitter follower was worth something about like $2, which was really funny because Twitter followers can change every day. As you know, some followers are just robots. They're not even real people. And they had said it was something similar to a client list, which obviously isn't the case. Right. So it's a very interesting case, and I definitely think it would be worth looking up if you have time.
Yeah, and they settled, but the details obviously were confidential. So I'm going to just move quickly through some of these other slides here. The Virginia court, First Amendment protection for lawyer bloggers. Just a quick blurb on this. Last fall, a Richmond criminal defense lawyer was hit with a public reprimand by the Virginia bar for blogging about his own cases and not including an advertising disclaimer on his blog. So again, you're going to get a copy of this presentation, but something to think about there for protection for lawyer bloggers. Can lawyers friend a judge on Facebook, and is being connected to opposing counsel a problem? Again, there hasn't been any rulings that I know of, and Sam, maybe, are you aware of any?
Not that I know of either.
That really give us details or specifics on whether or not you can friend a judge on Facebook. I think the big word here that I want to focus on is, friend and connected. And, what does that really mean when you friend someone or you connect with someone? Obviously, you're connecting with that person to see what information they are sharing, and hopefully to have a relationship. Build a friendship, build some business. But there's the other side of friending and connecting from a legal perspective, where you can find out more information on that particular person. So the reasoning or the intent behind friending or connecting with someone is really what I would believe in the legal community sparks the debate.
Yes.
You know, is it ethical to friend a judge or you know, opposing counsel if you are in a case with them and you want to find out more information? So, you know, again, we don't have real clear guidance here from a lot of the states and from the ABA in general, but really, if I would imagine if they could prove that the intent was and somehow malicious, that it would count against you. So I would just caution you to be careful with and know who you are connecting with, especially if you work with the court systems, you know, and with judges and things of that. So just be cautious there. The California Rules of Professional Conduct, I quite like them. And they put together in their professional rules 3 little examples here. And they go on to talk about it, and it says, in the past month, an attorney has posted the following remarks on our profile page, and it gives a little bit more of the specifics. So going through a couple of these bullet points here, case finally over, unanimous verdict, celebrating tonight. Basically, this was not a violation, according to the rules of professional conduct, because in the committee's opinion, the statement was standing alone is not a communication concerning the availability for professional employment, and that is a key there that I want people to be thinking about, concerning the availability for a professional employment. So they did not feel that that broke the rule. Number 2 and 3 here, another great victory today in court. My client is delighted. Who wants to be next? And won $1 million verdict. Tell your friends and check out my website. Those 2 would be considered a communication concerning availability for professional employment, and they would have been a violation. Won another personal injury case. Call me for a free consultation. Again, they think that this is a communication primarily due to the second sentence. Call me for a free consultation for, you know, advertising and soliciting work. So that would have been a violation. And then the last one, just published an article on wage and hour breaks. Let me know if you would like a copy. This was not necessarily a violation because it did not concern availability for professional employment, although that particular post is quite clever and cleverly worded. So if you're going to be doing these types of things, you know, posting something and wording it that way was quite clever. And so basically the conclusion of the California Rules of Professional Conduct was an attorney may post information about her practice on Facebook, Twitter, and other social media websites, but those postings may be subject to the compliance rule 1-400 if their content can be considered to be concerning the availability for professional employment. So something for attorneys to think about there. Do LinkedIn endorsements violate legal ethics? Again, one of our colleagues, Nancy Maryland, just did a recent post on this, and she found that opinions are all over the place on whether or not they really violate the legal ethics. You know, it's kind of hard, and we're at a time where there's just so much information that's out there, and these technologies keep changing, and the words that they're using, you know, especially with attorneys, if you say that, you can't say that you specialize in something or that you're an expert in something, because the model rule 7.4 of the ABA says if you don't have a particular if you don't have, what's the word here that I'm looking for? If you haven't been certified as a specialist by an organization, you can't say that you are a specialist. So the fact that these social media sites are using these words to, you know, talk about your skills and your expertise, that's what really causes a problem for lawyers. So again, you know, opinions all over the place. Some say it does, some say it doesn't. At the end of the day, I do want to let you know that you are the one who has control over whether or not you show your endorsements or not. And if someone on LinkedIn does endorse you, you have the ability to reject that and hide it. So something that you can do. What constitutes dispensing advice on legal channels? You know, that is a very tricky question, Sam. And I think that most attorneys, we need to really define, what is legal advice. Legal advice is giving of a formal opinion regarding a substance or procedure of the law, usually received from a lawyer, ordinarily in exchange for financial or other tangible compensation. And that's according to Wikipedia. But I would say that, because we have the internet, um, dispensing legal advice on the social channels, if you follow your ethics and you are not being compensated and you are being and using common sense, I think that you're going to be okay. Now, could you run into problems later on if you go to a site like Avo and answer a particular question and word it incorrectly? Yeah, you absolutely could run into problems later on, and that could be considered advice. But again, wanting to use common sense here. Can a lawyer advise a client in litigation to delete their profile? This one is really tricky because of, obviously, EDD or e-discovery, because you wouldn't want to remove information for, failure to preserve the evidence. But with social media, once it's out there, it's out there. And what you need to think about is someone could easily screen cap or capture a post or an update that you have shared. So even if your client did in fact delete their profile, that doesn't mean that the information is gone. Someone else could have captured it. And depending on the facts of the case, it's something that could be a possibility. There's really no solid guidance on this from the ABA or really from the state Bar Association. So I really would base this on the facts of the case and the desired ruling. So again, the answer would be, it depends. Okay, all right, so just a couple of don'ts. Don't post misleading information, past results, promised results, and testimonials. Don't make statements that characterize the quality of your legal services. And ultimately, a lawyer is responsible for the content that the information they post on their page, but is not responsible for information posted on their page by a third party, unless the lawyer uses the third-party content to break advertising rules. A couple of things that Sam and I want to leave you with is that there are some state bar applications. Hawaii, Maryland, New York, Ohio, Virginia, and more recently Arizona have them. And if your local state bar association is interested in having an app, and specifically one for ethics, we came across this I'm In Marketer company that will help you with your mobile app there. We've also posted here some links. These little graphics here are actually links that will take you to the Model Rules of Professional Conduct at the ABA and the Commission on the Ethics 2020. Here is all of our references that we've used in our research to put together this presentation for you today. And we want to thank you so very much for listening to us Babylon, even though it being quickly. We just have so much information. But again, like Tim said, you'll be able to access this webinar a little bit later and get a copy of the presentation that we've provided for you today. So thank you.
Thank you very much, and thank you, Tim, for having us. It's always wonderful, and I really hope we can come back and sort of talk about this more again.
Absolutely. There's just so much to talk about when it comes to social media. Just ethics alone can take up maybe a 2-hour webinar. But thank you, Natalie and Samantha, so much for this terrific presentation. And thanks for attending. Goodbye, everyone.